Hello. The Dance Umbrella Festival is just drawing to an end in London. For 2 months, capacity audiences have been attending more than 50 performances, and all over the UK, new dance groups and established companies are discovering that what used to be a small minority activity is reaching far more people than ever before. One of the most important figures in contemporary dance, one of the key figures, is Merce Cunnigham, the American choreographer. We decided it was a good time to look at him and his work. He's influenced an entire generation of dancers and choreographers, and his work has been controversial since the early 50s. We wanted to see him at work, find out about the basis and the context of his ideas, and show his present company in action. Jeff Dunlop's film was made in Cunningham's Manhattan studio and on stage in New York.
I have the idea that dancing doesn't need something else to support itself, that it is what it is by itself. It doesn't have to have a description to inform you ahead of time what this is, but rather that you come to this experience for what it is, as you might come to something that you have never seen before in the street. I always wanted to be in the theater. I grew up in a small town in the northwest of the United States near Seattle, and there was no particular theater in my life, and certainly there's nothing in my family background that would have conjured that up. But traveling vaudeville, that would still have played very occasionally, and I would have been very young then, but I'm sure I would have seen some of that. Now step left, right, skip, turn, and you start again. Right, left, up, ba, ba, ya, ba, da, ba, turn. Left, right, skip, step. Arms are open here, ba, ba, you this way, and the last one, step, step, turn. All the way to there to start all over again. Step here, right, left, up. When I was high school age, there was a woman who gave dance lessons in the town, and she was quite a remarkable lady. She had been in vaudeville and circus and many kinds of show business, theater business, and somehow her kind of energy and spirit was so explicit and so alive always. Even then she must have been, I don't know what age, 55 perhaps. The third one you're facing out this way, and the last one you turn a full turn and a quarter in order to start again in the direction you're going, and it's on a circle coming around. She taught us mainly tap dancing, but her rhythm was just remarkable. I can now say it that way, although as a youngster then I can only remember hearing her sound, the sound she made, and we would do the step that she had given us, and then she would say, no, no, that's not right. And then she would get up and do it, and I can hear the difference still.
Step, step, straight, step, step, tilt, step, step, turn, step, step, begin again. We try 2 by 2 from the corner. 1.
After high school, I went to a school in Seattle, Washington, which was a professional art school where we studied all the different, both visual and performing arts. And there I went specifically to be an actor, but the school was so arranged that you studied everything. And since there was dancing, I studied that, and eventually I got more interested in the dancing. In the drama, you had to always indicate something by words. It had to be clear, so to speak, and dancing had another kind of quality to it, and to me it has a kind of ambiguity about it, which I find much more interesting than something that's fixed. And I think even then, although I wouldn't have put it that way, I think even then I probably had some feeling about that. But I began to make things, dances for myself even then, and there's something about the idea of dancing having to represent something never really interested me. I don't see why it has to represent something. It seems to me it is what it is. It's a necessity. It goes on. Many people do it, and you don't have to have a reason to do it. You can just do it. And I thought movement has its own sort of source. And as I began to make things, they were solos in the beginning, and I worked with John Cage, who had, in a sense, similar ideas about sound, much more complex than say, the way I was thinking, but certainly in the same general direction. And then we began to meet young visual artists, Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns, and then not as well known as they are now, of course, but we could see there was some kind of common ground as concerned new ideas about the way things could be.
'65, Podiceps Novae Hollandiae.
I know the audiences in Milwaukee, in my hometown, were not very receptive to it. I had very little knowledge of the company when I first joined. I had no idea what the concept of the work was. I had no idea what their reputation was, really, except that there was a book out called Notes on Choreography that I picked up because I thought it might be interesting, and I showed it to my dance instructor at the university. He said, "Oh, don't bother reading that. It's not, there's nothing in there." So I went ahead and read it, and it was amazing. It was just, it's the best book on choreography or on dance that I've read. It just has Merce's notes, and somebody put them together in a very sporadic, erratic kind of way, and you read the book and you have to keep turning it because the notes go this way, they go that way, it's like Merce's work. It's multi-directional. starts with movement and he ends with movement. He deals with movement specifically and almost entirely. It's very classical, and it's like a Beethoven symphony where Beethoven uses a rhythmic pattern and then expands on that to make an entire symphony.
There's all kinds of movement in the world. You can see an airplane moving or a bird, of course. A piece of paper falling down out the window one day. I remember a number of pieces of paper coming down. They were so extraordinary the way each was different. The kind of sense of weight, of rhythm, and all of that goes into that. And when I first came to New York, I used to go to the zoo in Central Park and watch the animals, and I'd go back to try to imitate them, to see the way, not to be a cat, but to imitate the way that particular cat moved. There's something about, say, with the tiger, the way the weight of the paw goes down, that's, say, different, say, from a lion. If you watch people walking in the street, very often you see that they shift their balance and they'll always step off the curb on the same foot. Well, that makes a kind of rhythm, because that's how rhythm comes about. Mostly it's even, but then if you have to shift your weight, you have to make something to shift your weight, which makes an accent in the time. It changes cuts up the time a little bit. That's why I think when the waltz came in, it must have just thrown everybody off, because it changed the rhythm completely from 2 feet into something where you had to deal with 3. And we don't have 3 feet. So we had to do something else, which changed the rhythm and made the movement thing different. That's always the way I've worked. I watch things, not specifically to take a particular movement and use it, but to see what makes it up. I start from a very small movement or a large movement. It may be something I've seen one of the dancers do, Not necessarily even in class, but I sometimes have seen them standing around or with their friends. I think, oh, I never saw her do that before. That's nice. I'd like to try and see what that's like. I searched for movements and spent a great deal of the time, as I still do, in the studio, working on movement, figuring out movement possibilities, what could follow what, and how, if you were in one physical position, how you could get to another one. What were, so to speak, the possibilities of the human body moving. My idea would be not to make it unnatural, but to take something and stretch it and still keep it being natural. Because I think that's the most interesting. It's like asking a question about what can this person do and still be that person. He or she may be doing something that you haven't quite seen or dealt with before, but it's not to push them outside. It's not to make them unhuman or anything like that. That doesn't interest me at all. You see, I don't think that anything that anybody does in movement terms is abstract. I never thought that. I think it's, that it's a human being moving, however it is. What's abstract about it? I've always thought, if a dancer really does movement the way he or she would do that, not the way I do it, then it will come out. It will come out as the way they dance, as the way that person is, so to speak. Okay. Let's go back just a minute. There's just a couple. Kathy, what happened in the solo? If I have a long time with them, then I much prefer to work with the individual dancers. Rob and Meg and Lise, in the trio, there's something off. We have to just check one place. Something. I don't know. Yeah, no, I see what it is. Hold on just a minute. You have to, yes.
she takes your hand, that is, you've turned around and Meg takes your hand. Just do that, and do that, Meg. Now you're there. Now you must come up at that point. Start to come up, please. Otherwise, you see, you're going to get hit.
But it's been working where I've been letting go and going over more and then coming up.
That's all right, but does he help you?
Yeah, I begin to fall, and then as I
That's all right, but he should, it's the timing for him when to push you up is what he's not sure about.
Right, we have been letting go before. Something's off now.
Yeah. Now, there's one other place, too, where you hold this way. Can I just see that a moment? There's something wrong with the position. You're bending over, but you must curve your back. I don't know which foot is front, whatever. No, it should be more like this, you see. I don't know which foot is front, but rather than this way, it should be like this, you see. This way under. You may have to be further away from them to pull them out. That's right, that's right. Now do the next thing. Up, that's right. Now this is straight. Your knees are bent, but the back's straight, right. Now continue. Up, curve again, really curving your back.
There's a huge technical demand, a very large range of movement, and at the same time, each person has a great deal of responsibility. It's much more mature, I feel, than many other kinds of dance where you are specifically given exactly what you have to do, and there's no more freedom in it. But Merce leaves you very much alone to find your own way of doing it. And with Merce, there's you have to feel the time in your own body so clearly. You learn to wait, to be still, and to let a movement have its full impact and its fullness.
What I prefer is that each person come to this on his own terms, with his own ideas, not think he has to come on my terms, so that it doesn't rule out anything. In fact, it seems to me to open it all up for them. That is, that the spectator, the individual person who might come to see this, can deal with this in his own way. Sometimes that frightens them, and they have no clues as to how to deal with something. But I think in that sense it's like life. If you stick always to the same patterns, then you know how to react. If you come to something that you don't know about, you don't perhaps know how to react, but it can enlarge your experience. It can give you some kind of something else. And I prefer that, I think I prefer that opportunity. I don't think that I necessarily provide that all the time, but in my thinking, in my concern, that's what I do. I like the idea that when I come to a piece, I'd like to ask myself a question about something that I don't know about and see if I can find an answer. That might not be the only answer, but an answer.
105. '65, Podiceps Novae Hollandiae.
It seems to me that anything can become some way, in someone's eye, expressive, or if you like, sensual or whatever, or not. That doesn't depend upon the piece itself. That depends upon the person dealing with it. I think that, as Duchamp said, the spectator, so to speak, completes the action, but he completes it in his own way. I never think of when they ask me about audiences, I don't think of an audience as being a thing. I think of an audience as a number of separate individuals, each of whom can react in a different way. And they don't have to agree with each other. I know there's a reason about that.
Valid until 6 p.m. Sunday evening, local time. Adverse conditions for scattered, embedded thunderstorms and rain showers. Synopsis: cold front, southern Canada, moving southward to northeast New York, northern Ohio this evening.
I think if you do something that's probably out of the normal concept of what something should be, it immediately is difficult for people to see it or hear it. They can't accept it within the normal bounds of what they think something should be, and therefore they have to, since they can't accept it, they reject it instead of just leaving it alone.
Никто не звонил? Ну, целую тебя, Пончик. Окей, чао.
.48 Papillus pacificus.
Talk about the difference between then and now. The 50s were the time when suddenly the influences were going from America to Europe. De Kooning and the abstract expressionist movement, suddenly the giants were accepted, and this is true in dance too, and in music too. That a lot of the new ideas were coming from New York, and the 50s were an explosion. There was an enormous community of creative people that were sharing ideas, and so there were all these cross influences and enormous generosity.
I don't think many dancers came to my early work, some of course, but it was too odd for them. They didn't quite know where to put me. So there was no niche. In the early 50s, I was connected with Black Mountain College, founded by people from the Bauhaus in Germany who came in their 30s, and also one or two people from the United States, because they were dissatisfied with the ordinary kind of educational system. Buckminster Fuller was there, and Willem and Elaine de Kooning. And the point about Black Mountain was that instead of just being with dancers, say, if I went to a dance school, you were with at the dinner table, and you had to get there to eat, or there wasn't anything to eat. So you got there, and you sat around these separate tables, and you might be sitting with somebody from the science, or some painter or students talking about painting, so that the conversation jumped from one thing to another and was ordinarily very alive, interesting, or about music or whatever. It wasn't fixed in any way. Then, as I said, several years later, I went down with the dancers, and we worked and gave programs. And I suppose that's that point that my company, so to speak, began. I didn't form it, it just began. We just sort of got together and tried to keep together. That's all there is to it. up to then, my work had been connected with dancing where you made a dance or the dance was something and the music supported the dance in a certain way. The music framed the dance or set it, or you followed the music if the dance fitted, so to speak, to that. But with Cage, we began to think that the one element that dance and music have together is a use of time. I think everything else is intellectual about it. Everything else is figured out. But the one thing they do both use, sound and sight, they use up a time, or they exist in time. They don't use it, they just are there. And we thought, well, maybe you could have the two things going on at the same time, but one not supporting the other. Maybe the dancers could stand on their own two legs rather than having to stand on the music. Audio tape changed very much the way composers could think about music. Not only what sounds could be used, because with tape you could use so many other things other than conventional musical sounds. Also the way you composed. You had to do it in time, in lengths of time, rather than say musical phraseology.
Yeah, it seems to be a sore point in a lot of audiences' criticism about the work, and I guess mostly because of the loudness of the music, the dissonance of the music, and the fact that the music doesn't go with the dancing. To me, sometimes when the dancing is doing exactly the same thing that the music is doing, like they cancel each other out. But when the dancing and the music are doing different things, you can see them. And because the dancing is so complicated and so concentrated in ourselves, we cue off from other dancers rather than the music. The concentration is on stage, and very often I don't hear the music at all in sections where people say, oh, the music was so loud I couldn't stand it. And I said, well, I didn't even hear it.
Bob Rauschenberg described it once. He said, we have only two things in common, our ideas and our poverty. I thought that was a marvelous description. And it brought us together because we were interested in not expressing something, but rather looking at something exactly the way it was and putting it together in ways that had perhaps not been put together before. I try not to tell them what to do or what I want. I prefer that the designer, the artist, uses his imagination. There are certain limits we're human beings moving around, so that if he puts something hazardous for us, that's a problem. And they don't, not that they do that, but that's a kind of good faith that they won't. I think his work in the theater is quite amazing. And yet I don't tell him what to do in any sense.
Yeah. How much you got?
He seems to me, in the pieces he's done for us, to make something which is totally useful. It in no way infringes on us. He makes something which is visually really interesting. At the same time, it establishes something without accent. Just that the way he does it, it's so somehow works without pushing it in any way. I think of theater space or any space as something which is active all over. Just as if you're in the streets, you don't think of it, one part as being necessarily more active than another. I thought, well, I'll simply make the dances with the idea that the audience was on four sides, so that any point could be interesting or could be used. My solos, they're probably obviously less active than they would have been. And I don't do as many as I used to. I much prefer to make things for the dancers than myself.
Of course, his physical powers have diminished. And if he tried to do the same things we were doing, he would look ridiculous. I mean, he can't do them. So that by doing his own very private kind of movements, I think this is a very good way for him to continue being able to perform. And otherwise, he couldn't. I think it's exciting to see a dancer at his age continue offering all that he has to offer instead of everyone's notion of dance having to stop because one can't leap.
I mean, the age difference between Merce and his company was not that great, you know, in the 50s as it is now, so that the family aspect of the early years is missing, I think, and they don't share their lives in the same way. They don't eat together, play together.
1 and 2 and change.
It's more perhaps in the mainstream of the way dance companies function.
I detest teaching. I think it's one of the banes of existence. No. Well, when I began, first dances I made used dancers trained in other techniques. And I kept not being satisfied with this because it didn't seem to work for me for whatever reasons.
And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and brush, brush, brush.
And I thought, well, I can complain about how it doesn't work and attempt to deal with something which isn't satisfactory to me, or I can attempt to find a way to make them dance the way I'm interested in. So that it comes down to training.
Plie, plie, down, up, and down. Change, and.
Because I understand the necessity of it. It's just that a great deal of it is making these constant demands to someone to go further than they think they've gone. And I think they haven't gone far enough, or I can see they haven't, physically and any other way. And that's a kind of constant, everyday activity if you are teaching. Particularly, the teaching is difficult for me if I'm working on pieces or if we're rehearsing, because then my energies are involved with that, or at least I think they should be.
And finish.
My idea about technique always was, well, you have to be strong, you have to be flexible some way, and resilient. And by resilient, I mean not only the resilient body, but maybe in the head too, some way so that you can change. Given the human body, what it is, because it has very limited ways of moving, but given that, to be able to move in as many varied ways as possible. To be able to be so balanced physically, and maybe with your head, that you can move in a variety of ways, not just, say, 1 or 2 ways.
Here, and 1, and...
Something about flexibility, something about doing what you have to do as well as you can do it, at the same time not get stuck with it.
Get there each time, out, under, turn here, up, arm, get there, get to the position. Don't do this, this, and this, and this. It's not that slow, but that's what it looks like to the eye, and it has to be a single thing that stops, really stops. The same thing here, a single thing that stops, absolutely still. So it isn't this, and then that, and that. That makes another kind of thing. You get a very clear, complete shape right at the same moment. Once more, please. Let's try it faster. It's too slow. 1 and 2 and 1, 2, out, up, and out, back. Now, turn, close, and...
It is frustrating in certain ways to not be able to speak with him more privately, personally. But I see that his reason for doing it, I think, is excellent, because he is there, he asks us to do very difficult things when we're sometimes very tired. And if he didn't maintain a certain kind of distance, I think it would be much harder for him to deal with all of us. Every once in a while, very rarely, he'll give you a little pat or something, or say an encouraging word. Or mostly, though, it's once again, he expects us to take our own responsibility, knowing when we do well or poorly, and to do well.
There. There. Down. Close. Down.
Merce doesn't want to be a guru. He doesn't want to be a father figure. He does not want to direct his company. He wants to choreograph. He wants to make dances and have dancers, but I don't think he wants anything more than that.
I'm not really basically interested in being aloof. I don't find that very entertaining. I prefer to have a guru myself. I suppose that happens, but I don't. If it's what it is, it's what it is. But I don't really feel that way. No, I'd much rather be able to say hello to them.
In the early years, when most of us weren't as technically accomplished, perhaps, as some of his best dancers today, there was a human being there, a more total person on stage, and we were different from one another, and he saw those differences. And I think today he's interested in orchestrating a large company of dancers, and in most of the new pieces, they function as a group, as a company.
We're also starting to share roles more and more, which has a good reason, simply because we get so exhausted when we're touring, the people who have to do constant performing. But it also takes off a certain edge of challenge and vitality for me, at least. And I think pretty much that's a general feeling. So his interests are becoming more and more mathematical, almost structural, rather than purely movement or the energy of moving. Present time, the last 2 years or so, everything has been very much for the beautiful machine.
But the instant you get involved with the dance company, the daily life is like the daily lives of 20 people, all of whom are in some way dependent upon you or dependent upon the situation, so that everything is elaborated in this way immediately, and you don't have much choice about keeping it going. Even under the most difficult circumstances, I was never interested in doing something, so to speak, that had already been done. I didn't see much reason for that. I thought, well, other people can do that or do it. I much preferred to work on something I didn't know about, even though I knew quite well that it might not be seen, or it might be seen under difficult circumstances, or it might not work. It might not function at all.
In, I can keep coming in and out. And the other thing,
the other thing is, if I stay open, I see the point where I get 2 stick changes over here, and then after the second one, I can come here and get it isolated again. Well, let's just do it, and we'll see how it works out.
all right. Could we go back now and go this far from the beginning?
I wasn't interested in making a piece about something. I wanted to make something dealing with television. So we began to figure out what were some questions we could ask about dancing and video camera. It presents such curious limitations about dancing, not all of which are easy to deal with, but at the same time, it focuses your attention in another way on dancing, on movement, how movement can operate in a given situation, and changes totally space, and changes, of course, the time also, and all of those things I'm interested in.
He cuts in again, and because of this, well, here I can cut back. Now we do the same thing here. I'll follow Chris.
Okay. And take the stick.
Right. And I've got the ball.
Okay, now I'm going to Robert.
I'm on all of that.
You're going to have the foreground, background. I'm still just going to have Robert.
So I always think, well, there must be something else. There must be something I don't know about. I think it's easy enough to figure out, so to speak, what you know about, but it's better to try to look for what you don't know about. Dancing seems to me at the moment, I don't know how the dancers feel about it, but I think it's in some way a marvelous situation, not because of the many people who look at dancing. That's another thing, and that's all to the good or to the bad, depending on your point of view. But it seems to me that dance, or dancing or whatever, has many possibilities now to deal with. There's so many different changes in the world. So many things have changed. We know it's true in sound. We know it's true in the visual arts. It must be possible in dancing. It's, as Duchamp said, it's normal, so to speak, that things have changed, therefore it should change. It could change in the arts. And I myself think there are multiple possibilities for dancing now. The way it can be, where it can be presented, the kind of dancing that's done, the kind of use of dancing in relation to other things, all of that is simply and one of the things that has radically changed that is television. Because, not the dancing on television, but simply because people look now differently. 2 generations of people in the United States have grown up and they make their own continuity with the channels. They go from one thing to the other. They don't listen, they look. And they suddenly woke up to the fact that they could look at dancing.
Merce Cunnigham at 60. Next week, Christopher Newpen's award-winning film, Elegies for the Deaths of 3 Spanish Poets. Good night.
1 and 2 and 1, 2, out, up and out, back. Now, turn, forward.